According to the website Business Line on Campus, there's a new and emerging insight around building future leaders. Perhaps the most revealing and empowering insight is that it requires the leader to change their behavior for effective leadership. There are so many resources to help leaders succeed. Tonight, we'll hear from two experts whose mission is to make us great leaders. I'm so happy you're joining us.
From Los Angeles, this is KLCS PBS. Welcome to Everybody with Angela Williamson, an innovation, arts, education, and public affairs program. Everybody with Angela Williamson is made possible by viewers like you. Thank you.
What sets the best leaders apart from the rest is their ability to balance people and performance. The ability to stay focused on the mission and achieving results while at the same time building quality relationships. Research supports this idea, but there are also plenty of stories of real people doing real work that provide even more compelling evidence for this balanced approach. I experienced one of those stories right here in this space. Not too long ago, this area was a big pile of dirt and rocks. Billy, the contractor I hired to transform this barren wasteland, called it a blank canvas. He was being kind. But when Billy brought in his crew, things started to change. It took some time though, several months in fact, from start to finish. So I had the chance to observe and get to know the guys who did the work and observe how they interacted with each other. Hector, the team leader, was here almost every day. But he wasn't the kind of leader that told people what to do and then disappeared off into some cozy office someplace. Hector was hands-on. One minute he'd be waist deep in a muddy trench, and the next minute he'd be climbing a ladder with a stack of heavy tiles on his shoulder. No doubt he worked hard, but he always wore a smile, and he always seemed to be encouraging the other guys. There was a lot of playful banter, and everyone seemed to enjoy the work and enjoy each other. Hector clearly led by example, but he also took the time to connect with each member of his team. That's why I was fascinated to hear Hector's story. Billy, the owner of the company, met Hector when Hector was a skinny 18-year-old kid standing with a group of day laborers near a Home Depot. Nothing distinguished Hector from the group other than he was younger than most of the other guys, and he looked as though he recently missed a few meals. Nevertheless, Billy thought he was qualified for the job that was on the agenda for that day and invited him to jump into the truck. That was 22 years ago. Along the way, Billy took the time to teach Hector everything he knew about the business, and Hector soaked it all in. Now Hector owns a home, has a family, and is showing the newer guys how to succeed. Gilbert is another success story. Gilbert now works closely with Billy to manage the business, but also just a few years ago, Gilbert was a homeless addict. When Gilbert hit rock bottom, he found his way to church and experienced a dramatic conversion. But he needed a job and a path back, and Billy gave him that chance. Initially, Gilbert did back-breaking labor in the California sun, digging, moving rocks, and planting. As he sweated through his work, the poisons he had previously put into his body came pouring out. Soon, Gilbert worked his way up to become a foreman and then office manager, and the kind of leader that knows the power of grace. When I asked Billy, the owner of the company, what his leadership philosophy was and how he thought it influenced the success of his business, he offered a simple yet profound response by saying, sometimes you just have to give guys a chance, get to know them, and build relationships. You know, I wasn't surprised, but I was pleased. I was pleased to know that what I wrote about and taught were actually being modeled right here in my own backyard. Better results do often come down to one thing, and that one thing is building better relationships.
Dr. Mike, what an empowering story. That story has a lot to do with the book we want to discuss today, so tell me about your book.
Sure. I've had the opportunity to study leadership my entire life, and I've always been fascinated with the difference between good leaders and bad leaders? That's always the question I come back to in my scholarship and my practitioner-oriented work. And so I wanted to explore what makes a good leader and what makes a bad leader, because we've all had really bad bosses that we could have done without, and we've had some great leaders. And so what makes them different? And that's what I explored in the book.
And so my question to you is, when you were trying to examine this, because you are a scholar, so you're trying to examine the good leaders versus what makes a bad leader, tell me a little bit about what did you discover, and then when you discovered it, how can we actually help those leaders who, I'm just going to say, not so good, become good leaders?
Right. Yeah, we all want to be a good leader or be around good leaders. And these lessons I unpack here really apply to teams and being a good teammate as well. So what I discovered is really the key is being able to balance a focus on the mission as well as taking care of the needs of the people involved. So it's that balance, and I use that metaphor of the scales a lot in the book and when I talk about the book, because those who can keep those two really critical aspects of leadership in balance are the ones that tend to accomplish great things and bring out the best in the people around them.
Can you tell me, Dr. Mike, how does behavior play in the role of a good leader versus I'm always going to say not so good leader?
Sure, sure. Well, our behavior impacts people, and I think that's something critically important for everyone to recognize. Even if you're not a leader, you're powerful in that you're impacting the people around you. You're either bringing out the best in the people around you or bringing out something less than the best in the people around you. So in the book, I talk about some specific leadership practices, some specific team practices that help people bring out the best in the folks around them. You know, let's take an example of this focus on the mission. Is everyone clear about what we're here to do? You know, when President Kennedy said, we're going to send men to the moon and bring them back safely by the end of this decade, there was no doubt what the mission was, and everyone focused on it, and we accomplished that mission. Unfortunately, sometimes people come into the workplace and they're not so clear on what we need to get done this week, this month, this year, today. And so the mission should influence how we use our time, how we prioritize our activities, and so that clarity is really important. Imagine this. I'm a golfer.
Okay.
Are you a golfer?
No.
Well, you should give it a try. It's a lot of fun.
I've taken lessons.
All right, keep at it.
Okay.
I'm not very good, but think of it this way. If you walked up to that first tee on this beautiful golf course, you've taken lessons, you bought a new set of clubs, you've got these pristine golf balls, and you get to the first tee, and you look around and you have no idea which direction to hit the ball. Where is the green? Where are you hitting the ball? That's like we do to a lot of people in the workplace. They show up well prepared, ready to go, enthusiastic, and then they don't quite know what we want them to do. And that's a problem. That's really the first thing. Something else related to mission, and then we can talk about people. We got to help people connect the mission to why it matters to them. We need to make the mission meaningful to them, because when the mission has personal meaning to a person, it just taps into that intrinsic motivation that makes them positive and engaged and enthusiastic and all in. They're committed, they're accountable, they're making good choices in the workplace. We don't have to use carrots and sticks if they're accountable and committed.
Wow. And you mentioned you wanted to talk about people. Does that include when you have a strong mission that brings value, does that actually include the people that you are serving as a leader, or does it include something else?
Well, we started talking about the practices of a mission first, people always leader, and clarity of the mission and making the mission matter. That's important. But when we're dealing with people, we need to do things like learn how to collaborate well, learn how to communicate effectively, have healthy opposition. This is one of my favorites, healthy opposition. Have you ever been on a team where everyone always goes along to get along, everyone agrees? There's never that healthy debate. In my research, I found that those teams are usually pretty average. In fact, I asked people who are on teams like that to give themselves a grade, and I've never heard a grade higher than C- in terms of the output, the production, the productivity of that team. Healthy teams have healthy oppositions, and if you're not able to have that good, vigorous, vibrant debate, you'll never innovate, you'll never be as creative as you could be, you won't come up with new practices, you will always be average. And who wants to be average?
No one does. So my question to you is, if I'm a leader, Dr. Mike, and I have a team like that, and my business depends on them being innovative, what would you advise me to do?
Shut up. And I don't, sorry about that.
Hey, this is a talk show.
Let your people have a voice.
Yes.
So, in my observations of leadership in teams, where teams get in trouble is when a few people dominate every conversation. In fact, Google did a very famous study about what their most effective teams did, and one of the interesting findings from the study was that the most effective teams, on those teams, everyone tended to talk about the same amount of time. When you have a few people that dominate the conversation, like the boss, you're missing opportunities from people that may have a great idea, but because of their personality or they feel intimidated or whatever, they're not sharing. You've got to really ask people to share and get involved in the conversation, and then you be quiet as the leader and listen, because you'll be pleasantly surprised at what your people say.
Wow, well, you just gave us the tip of the iceberg. So my question to you before we end our conversation, someone's out there watching and they love what you had to say and they want to get in touch with you and possibly have you bring this book to their people. So how do we get in touch with Dr.
Sure,
Mike?
I do training, I speak, and the best way is drmikepattison.com, drmikepattison.com. And the book has its own website. It's that good. It has its own website, missionfirstpeoplealwaysbook.com.
Wow. Well, Dr. Mike, thank you so much for just giving us a little bit of an insight of how we can be a successful leader, but also, too, how people within an organization, what they should look for in leadership as well. So you've pretty much covered everything with this book, and I know someone will be reaching out to you. So thank you so much.
Thanks for having me.
And you stay right there and come back as I continue my conversation on leadership with Colonel Garth Massey. Thanks so much.
Hi, my name's Colonel Garth, and my company CommandReady is partnering with Ultimed to bring leadership development to the LA Unified School District. We, for years now, have been working in after-school programs to develop students with real-world skills. Our programs meet once a week with your students when they get out of school. We talk about things like setting a budget, public communication, public speaking, social media, how to apply for colleges, how to apply for jobs, and we network and coach the students through the entire school year. We start in the last week of September, and the program runs until the first week of May. And then once a month, we get these kids together and we bring them out to new places for new challenges, whether it's jumping off high ropes courses or coming out to meet the wolf tribe, where an actual pack of wolves is brought in to talk about team building and how groups and people can work together to get the best outcomes in their life. Joining the Youth Champion programs gives your students an opportunity to take themselves to the next level, to build their leadership, to build their confidence, and take them on to the next chapter in their life. I look forward to seeing you in the classroom.
Welcome back to our conversation about creating leaders who matter. Colonel Garth Massey, thank you so much for being here. We started talking about leaders and business leaders, but you do something a little bit different with leadership.
We do. We stretch the program out, right? So my company, CommandReady, teaches leadership to corporations here in LA, but also all over the country. But we started a youth program about 4 or 5 years ago. And the idea was if we could get leadership and activities baked into people's lives earlier, then when they were going out into the job market, they're coming out with another set of skills, or at least an understanding of what like teams or organizations need when they're looking to promote or to hire. So we created the Youth Champion program. So we do an after-school program for that.
And there are a number of after-school programs, but
Sure.
not any that I've heard of that trains like leadership skills to young people. That's really ambitious.
Well, it's been a lot of fun, actually. The students are looking for opportunities to grow, but we also are bringing things that they just don't get a chance to see all the time. I jokingly tell them I'm going to be the coolest aunt or uncle they never had. We bring veterans in as our instructors. So military service is part of CommandReady's brand.
Okay.
Everyone who teaches or instructs is a veteran of some armed service. And then they're coming back with real life skills and education and real world experience. So when they're telling the kids a story, they're telling them stories about things that have actually happened in their life before they came back and started working with them in the after school. So they can share ideas about setting a budget for the household or how to interview for a job, having gone through several layers of that. It's just a slightly different twist in what the kids get to normally see. So.
Well, and I love that you said that it's a slightly different twist, because it seems that you really, your organization is strong on getting those stories out. So why do you think that makes a difference for the students to hear the stories?
I think it's about how we learn. So we don't really teach teamwork in our school system. We shouldn't, right? We're teaching individualism. You have to get good grades. You have to do well on a test. You have to get a good resume. Then you get a good job. Then you do a good job on a project. And at some point, someone finally says, hey, here's an opportunity to lead, and you can be in charge of 3 people. And that's all great. But when you get that opportunity and you're suddenly in charge, the things you need to do to transition from a great doer to someone who's actually leading others are very nuanced. There's a lot of finesse to it, and we haven't taught it. The closest we come is to say, well, I was on a sports team. But sports teams is still about individual effort. I mean, there aren't a lot of running backs, at the end of their 4 years of high school that are talking about the team's win-loss record. They talk about their yards or their touchdowns or, the things that they've accomplished. So if we can work with students younger to teach the aspects of how to live a life well, how to study well, how to set goals in a way that put them on a path that they may not have known existed. And what we find with a lot of the students is they have a very narrow view of what's possible, right? I mean, they have one type of job that their family may know. They have one type of industry that they've been exposed to. We do a civic government day, and we go meet a local mayor, city council member, chief of police, and chief of fire. And routinely, it's the first politician or law enforcement person that these students have ever met in person. I mean, unfortunately, there's too many movies where the Marines just got, the big muscles, the tight haircut, they shoot a lot of bullets, they're all yelling and screaming. Nothing about leadership taught by the military is yelling and screaming. That's not how we function. It's an all-volunteer force. We work to have critical thinkers. We work to have people who are working their way through problems. It's an idea called maneuver warfare. It's been around since the Prussians and Napoleon, and the whole idea is that you create opportunities to see other options. So if you ever get to a world where it's a binary answer, right?
Okay.
There's either a yes or a no, or a 1 or a 0.
Yes.
You've been forced into a place where you don't actually have a choice, where you don't actually have the ability to think and work and create your own reality. So in maneuver warfare, the premise is not that it's 1 and 0, it's that it's 1 and an infinite number of possibilities. Now there are some bad choices, but there are also a lot of really good choices that aren't presented. And so anytime you're dealing with or working with other people and they come up and they say, you either do this or you do that, what you've gotten yourself into is you've been pigeonholed a little bit and you're stuck. And leadership is about saying, well, wait a minute, what about this third opportunity or this 5th opportunity, and work our way around the cycle that way. So we try and impart that. So the kids don't just have East LA Junior College, great school,
Yes.
but they don't just have that. Last year we had 2 kids get accepted to Dartmouth. We had 6 or 7 going to UCLA. We had UCI. So our graduating group of seniors, every single kid in our graduating group of seniors got accepted into a 4-year university, and some of them are world class, and they involve packing up and moving, and that's terrifying too. Yeah. So when you have somebody who's traveled or who's moved or had to do things they didn't want to do, it helps create better questions, and better questions create other options, and that gets you away from the 1 or 0, and that's what we're looking for.
There's so much in that, and it's all fantastic. Do you find that it's a challenge to start to impart this new type of thinking to these young people? Because, I mean, you are really thinking outside the box there. So is it a challenge? You have to work everybody to this point, and how do you do that?
So we meet once a week. That gives us about 26-hour-long sessions over the course of the year.
Okay.
Plus once a month we go do our Go and See tours. It's free for any kid that wants to come sign up, as long as they're in the high school program in Los Angeles. It's Zoom meetings during the week, and then the Go and Sees are in person. And yes, it takes time. I mean, when we first start these, we're on a Zoom call, everyone turns the screen off, nobody wants to be seen, nobody talks. When they, by the end of the year, we've got people in the chat, we've got side conversations going, we have breakout rooms, and it's about building comfort and confidence. I mean, we all know what it's like to go to a dance or out to a group or to a networking event, and you have to stand there and you look at this crowd of people who have it all figured out, and they're all talking and they're all engaged and they're all doing something, and you're standing on the sidelines. And how do you start? What's that first step that helps you walk up to somebody or something that you don't know and embrace it? It's a virtue of courage, right? It's the ability to try other things even though you feel nervous about it. Well, we're trying to teach that to the students, and that takes the whole year. It takes a lot of encouragement, and to some of them, I mean, I'm scary. I'm this old military guy who gets on these Zoom calls, and I'm taller than I look on Zoom, I guess, because when I meet them in person, that's one of the first things I always say, and I'm not even that tall. So it's getting them to open the aperture up and see more of the world. And when they can see the world, they can see the possibilities, and then is the exciting part, because then they can shape themselves into whatever they want to be. And if you've ever worked with youth programs, that's where all the energy is. Like when the light bulb goes off and the student suddenly realizes, I just have to try. And there's a grind and there's work and there's adversity, but if you just try, you can put yourself into a place to do something you never thought was possible. And there's value in that,
There definitely is value in that, and with there being value, I want to just change it a little bit and change the direction and talk about the volunteers that you have working with you, other veterans. What do they say when you pull them in? And because you said this project's a few years old, so you had to recruit, and you recruit people. So what do you tell them?
We've been growing every year, and we're actually partnering with a bunch of great people. So there are donors, business people throughout LA who've said, we want a better pool of young people to bring into our businesses. So they donate money to a nonprofit called UltiMed. UltiMed is a healthcare service provider. They work in underserved communities. They have clinics, they have dental, they have hospitals, and they have these great healthcare hospital programs. So UltiMed started the Youth Champion programs with the donors, and they hired my company, CommandReady, to come in and put a different flavor on the instruction. Because what happens is if every bit of instruction comes from one place, you lose sort of the newness.
Yes.
The diversity, the ideas that come from different places. And so the students that were going through the original program, they would come in and then they would come back and work as interns, or they would get hired at UltiMed, which was good, but it didn't open up a world of possibilities. So by bringing in some of our military vets and to put the CommandReady leadership program in with them, now it's created any industry or any school, and it's helped show a lot of different thoughts. So when we start a class, we have an UltiMed representative, we have myself, we have one of our veteran instructors, and then maybe we bring in a personal finance individual from outside who volunteers his time to teach finance, which really for the kids means how to balance a checkbook. Or we brought in a film producer in kind of your world. A gentleman had made a documentary, and he came in and talked about making a film to the kids. And so we get volunteers that come to speak to the kids. So at least every month they're meeting someone new. We've had people from NASA, we've had people from hospitals, we've had finance folks, business folks. anything that shows them other opportunities and just gives them a taste of something that might be possible. We try and bring it in, and we schedule it throughout the year in the 26 sessions, and then at the end, when you graduate Youth Champions, you've graduated from a breadth of knowledge. And a lot of our students are in their second or third year, because you can come back every year. We take 10th graders and then up through senior year.
That was my question. When can a student join, and can they come back? And you answered those questions.
Yeah.
So since you already answered those questions, I won't ask that
We
one.
love when they come back.
But I want to I want you to look into the future.
Okay.
And tell me, where do you see this program in the next 5 years? What would you like to do with this?
So I think this program becomes one of the many good additions to a solid resume, right? So as the program gains steam, it starts to have structure that it didn't have originally. It starts to have a curriculum with known or better known outcomes. So when a student says, I was in the Youth Champion program, we can create opportunities for them not only to do the class, but to have leadership, like a test of leadership during it, to lead an event or to set up a go and see. And we need that. Our youth programs have kind of flagged a little bit. They're not as big as they used to be. It's hard to coordinate bringing people together. And so this gives something that students can put on a resume. But more importantly, it gives them something where they can, when they interview with a potential employer, talk about skill sets that will make them better employees, right? So our acceptance into colleges has been really great, but we've also had a lot of job offers come through too. Several of the donors or people who get involved in the program that make it free for the kids, also when they see a highlighted student, create opportunities for them too. So there are several students that have gotten jobs, and give it a couple more years, we'll start having students come back and help us with the instruction too. So it's only a matter of time.
Well, and I think that's important for those students to come back and be mentors as well, because now their peers can see this program works.
Yeah. And we've got hundreds of kids in, and again, it's free, so it's an hour. You have to commit to the whole year, but we have a lot of little prizes. We have books to read. So if you read one of the books, you get paid a little money. If you submit the book report, you get paid a little money. And it's not a guarantee every time. It's not like it's something you plan on making X amount of dollars, but we encourage and reward participation. And so the whole program is designed so people who put into the program benefit from it. And we're just shaping an environment where kids can grow.
Which is a quality of leadership, a great quality of leadership, and I appreciate what you're doing with our youth. And I'm looking forward to hearing more about what happens with what you're doing in our community with our youth around here in the leadership skills.
Yeah,
so thank you so much for being here. And thank you for joining us on Everybody with Angela Williamson. Viewers like you make this show possible. Join us on social media to continue this conversation. Good night and stay well.